Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Hess. I'm the VP of Content Strategy here at Carnegie, and I'm so excited today to share with you our thoughts on building a modern enrollment engine. And what that looks like is new rules of student search, AI discovery, personalization, and really getting to the heart of what students want. I'm super excited to be joined by two of our search experts, even though they probably both define search a little bit differently. But John, Jocelyn, I'd love if you took a second to introduce yourselves and maybe share what search means in your world.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Caitlin. Well, first of all, very, very nice to be here and excited to walk through a lot of this information with you all. My name is John Koval. I'm the VP of AI Search here at Carnegie. To me, when I mean AI search, I'm thinking about those prospects who are on the internet, on Google, on ChatGPT, Perplexity, and they're exploring college and university options. That's what I interpret and how we mean search from an AI search perspective. So as I talk through my sections, as you'll see, it'll be a little bit different, but it's all encompassing in the sense of AI search is part of the larger student search journey and trying to reach the right prospects. But just wanted to provide that little bit of clarification. I've been in the search world for about 10 years and been at Carnegie for half of that, and really excited to talk through what we learned today. Over to you, Jocelyn.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. I'm Jocelyn DeYoung. I'm the Senior Director for Enrollment Strategy, and I've spent the last 22 years working at large public institutions in undergraduate admissions, most recently serving as Assistant Vice Chancellor and Director of Undergraduate Admissions at UC Berkeley. Prior to that, spent 7 years at the University of Washington in Seattle leading marketing and communications and visitation programs. And when I talk about student search, I'm talking about that institutional side where we are seeking to find the right fit students as we search for students to build our class. So with that, I'll pass it back to Caitlin.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So as we tee up the conversation today, wanted to give you just high-level overview of what we're planning to cover. So first is why this conversation matters now, why we're having it, why we need to be having these types of conversations in higher ed. Then we'll walk you through a little bit of the research from our Next Gen Learners study. I felt like we couldn't have a conversation like this without understanding what students want and why they want it. Then digging into AI as a new layer of discovery, why traditional search tactics are maybe not enough, and what a modern search requires. And then we'll wrap it all up with practical takeaways. So those will be the slides that you screenshot and take away from this, if nothing else. And so, Jocelyn, as sort of our student search expert, would love to hear from you why this conversation matters so much right now.
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. I think as we'll review, the way prospective students are discovering our institutions has really kind of reached a tipping point, and they're no longer just browsing websites or using AI and answer engines to really vet our campuses before they ever hit our inbox or our websites. And so in an ever increasingly, competitive environment for students, if our enrollment strategies aren't evolving to meet these new behaviors, we aren't just at risk of, missing engagement, we're missing the chance to really be part of their decision-making process at all. And so if we go to the next slide, in the past, search has historically been a volume game, primarily driven by historical conversion rates. However, predictability for many campuses has softened, and so we have to really adapt our approach. So today, students are learning about our institutions through their peers, their parents, websites, social media, email, direct mail, answer engines, search engines. I mean, the list goes on, right? Which means that our strategy must shift from casting really a wide net in one channel to being kind of omnipresent and relevant wherever the students are. And so at Carnegie, we saw an opportunity to truly understand the next generation of learners, which meant going straight to the source. So, Caitlin, if you want to walk us through what we learned in our latest research survey, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I really felt this wasn't initially part of the plan for this recorded webinar, but it felt like we couldn't have this conversation without really talking or asking students what they were looking for and using that as sort of a way to ground this conversation. So the Next Gen Learners study was a survey of 3,300 teens, so age 13 to 18. We really wanted to capture both Gen Z and Gen Alpha opinions here and how they were making their decisions on which college or university to attend was where we started from. But the first question we asked is, are you interested in attending a college or university? And potentially, or to me, the most shocking finding was that 51% of them said, no, I'm actually not interested in uh, pursuing college. And so for me, that opens up a slightly different conversation, a different opportunity. This research that we're going to talk through here focuses on the 49% who said yes, they were interested. We do also have a version of the report on the 51% and the opportunity there. But what we were trying to get at with this survey was not just how they're making the decisions or what's driving them, but why it mattered to them so that we could really use that data to inform our messaging. And so we asked around sort of some key areas that we know always drive these types of decisions. And what we found is in terms of financial considerations as a concern in pursuing college, is that 61% of our survey respondents cared more about affordability instead of ROI. And I think they doubled down when we asked, like, what does that mean to you? And cost of living was the number one factor. And so students are no longer asking, even the ones who said, yes, I'm interested in college, it's not about which college, it's which college can work for me right now. And they're thinking about their overall life, how it fits in to their current situation, and if it's feasible or possible. And so when we get into future sections, I'm going to walk us through the research. Jocelyn's going to share a little bit of how you can use this to inform your messaging. But the second factor that we looked at was campus feel. And this is probably one of my favorite sections because we asked them what campus feel meant to them, and vibes and aesthetics were the two things that came up pretty consistently. But the other finding that I think is interesting is that 26% of these students said that campus feel was their number one decision factor. So again, that's ahead of academics, that's ahead of financial consideration. They really wanted to understand what it would be like to be a student there. Campus feel was an important decision maker for them. And 34% said that they were most interested in day in the life content. And so students are really trying to figure out, like, can this work for me? And can I see myself on that campus? When we asked about academics, and academics was the number one factor when we asked what was driving decisions. But what they were specifically looking for when we dug a layer deeper was flexibility. And this is not in the qualitative, we sort of asked for more. They were not looking for flexibility in terms of like asynchronous or online classes. They were actually looking for an opportunity for variety. So does this institution offer a wide range of majors and courses? And can I potentially change streams mid path? So maybe I start out as one major and I want to switch to another. Is the school going to make that possible for me? And then the second and third factors here are really around outcomes. So they wanted to know, what are the real world opportunities I'm going to get from this institution? And then what are the career aligned pathways? So what comes next? And so again, all of this becomes really important when you're thinking about messaging through that student search process. Brand reputation was a contributor to decision making. This was also kind of surprising to me that 87%, so a wide majority of them thought it was important that the institution that they were looking at has a reputable brand. And then 9% said that was the most important decision factor. So more than academics, more than campus feel, more than financial considerations, brand was their number one decision driver. And then this one is probably the least surprising, but students want marketing that understands them. And when you think about who these students were, who these teenagers were that we were talking to, They've never lived in a world that wasn't personalized to them. They have TikTok algorithms, Amazon shopping experiences, Netflix experiences that are catering content, products, services directly to them. And so, of course, that's what they're expecting from a college or university as well. So, personalization and marketing that understands them is a super important thing to consider. And then finally, one of the other areas we looked at is AI discovery. And so we asked, how are you, or what AI tools are you using? And the majority of them were using ChatGPT first. And then you can see Gemini and a few other tools here. But one thing that I thought was interesting and vastly different compared to research we did even a year ago, 49% of them are reading the AI summaries before ever clicking through to a website. And so being prepared for AI discovery is super important. Even if they're not starting on ChatGPT, they're using an AI tool often, sometimes without even knowing it. And so I'm excited to have John here to talk us through what does this mean, and then what can schools do about it. So, John, over to you.
Yeah, and so I as I walk through this, I kind of want to take a step back and see how do we get to this. I'm going to round it up 50% number, because it's happened very quickly, and it is a monumental shift in the way in which information discovery is happening on the web. So let's take, a further back step than even a few years ago and go, when did we need to discover information? When we needed to learn something, we used to have to go to the information. So this is a very simple example of a library, which I mean I still go to libraries often because they have really great selections and it's free. But this with me going there, opening the card, trying to find the reference where my piece of information on XYZ school might be. I go and I navigate. And you can kind of smell this library. You know what this is like, right? And then this was not just information discovery in this sense, but thinking about like getting directions or um, trying to set up an appointment or even just asking for a job or applying for a job. All of that happened in a totally analog way. So then let's fast forward a little bit. So, early 90s now, late 90s, we're looking at Google. And so Google released right at the end of the century, and it was revolutionary because it transformed information discovery from that us going to the information to us typing a couple of keywords into a search bar and navigating websites. And that was huge, right? But search now with AI is actually taking it even one step further. And so we're at another point of revolution, and the last 20 years of information discovery from search bars and clicks and results pages and more clicks, all of that is sort of shifting to a totally different experience. And that's because of ChatGPT. So when ChatGPT came out in 2022, what that did is it fundamentally altered how I, as a user, discover things. So, yes, previously with Google, navigating websites was great and much better than going to the library. But that burden of information and burden of research was still on me as a prospective student. I still had to navigate the web. I still had to check if that website made sense, if it had the right information, was it accurate, was it not? And so that in itself was a great step towards where we're at now. But now all I have to do as a prospect is go to ChatGPT or my favorite search bar or search and just move from that search to that conversational experience. And so look at this example here I have at the top. Basically, I went from a what's the best nursing school in New England to here's what I'm looking for. Here's the type of school I want, where I want it. I want strong ROI. I want to make sure I have good job placement. And then I'm given a curated list of all the schools to explore, and I can take it a depth, the next step, ask more questions, explore further, and so on. And this is the reality of Gen Z and Gen Alpha especially. And they've grown up with these tools and they use these tools. They're part of their lives and it's everywhere. It's not just ChatGPT anymore. It's Perplexity, it's Claude, it's built into every Google product. Copilot, Grok, they're all a big part of everyone's day to day. And so this is the default now. I don't hear I go Google something. I hear, oh, I went and chatted that. That's the new expression. So with that, that creates a shift and it creates a problem for some brands and many brands who are not prepared for this because now you need to show up for answer engines. So if we take one last look at this before I move into how you kind of make these changes and what to do about your content, I'm just going to summarize the behavior I just went through. Old behavior: type a specific search bar or search query into a search bar, clicking through links, clicking through websites, and I'm regularly visiting a website or two. I'm going back to find that information, verify it, etc. This new behavior: I'm using natural conversational language, asking questions in the way that I want to ask them with the details I want to provide. And then I'm relying on AI to surface that most relevant information. And I'm generally trusting it because it's providing very confident, clear information. It provides citations, and it's easy. And I really only need to visit a website when seeking in-depth info, or I'm really ready to take that next step. So because of that, you need to think about what are students actually asking these engines. So there's four areas that we sort of learned from our research. Is one is affordability. Is XYZ school affordable? Can I afford it? Can it be something that can fit into my family's budget, into my budget? Campus vibe. Is it fun? Is it somewhere I want to be? Is it safe? Does it fit my lifestyle and who I am as a person outside of academics? Programs and outcomes. Do they have the program I'm looking for? If they do, is it a good program? If it is a good program, good job placement, can I actually get a career out of this institution, and it's sort of the route I want to go to take the next 4 years or beyond with my life? And then reputation. Is it a strong reputation? What are its value propositions? What is it known for? What do other students think about it? These are the types of questions that are being asked in ChatGPT. So if that's the case, then your content needs to be ready for that. So that's where AEO comes in. So AEO is answer engine optimization, and that's basically, in simple terms, it is structuring and optimizing your content so the brand, product, or service, in this case, colleges and university, is accurately represented and easily surfaced in AI-generated responses. There's a lot that goes into that, but at a very high level, five key areas to focus on to ensure that you're ready for AEO, you're start doing AEO best practices. And I'll go through these, but if there's any additional questions or detail or asks or want or knowledge, Carnegie offers a full suite of AEO solutions. Happy to support and provide additional information there. But at a high level, lead with the answer and drive conversation. So always make sure your content is thinking about the questions that are being asked and that it's answering those questions, but then also continuing to answer further questions that would continue from that conversation. So it's not about one and done. It's about thinking through that. What would be the next question, to keep them engaged and focused on your content and ensuring that you're providing the answers that they need. Make the content easy to interpret. Very simple idea, but not always easy to do. And a lot of content on university websites is written maybe in marketing language or marketing lingo, or it's written with more of an educational or faculty focused mindset. And so that in case does not actually lead to answers that are easy to interpret and take and sort of move to a student who's asking a real life, real personal question. Build trust beyond your website. Ensure that you know where your content is being cited from beyond your website. Is it from Reddit? Is it from YouTube? Is it from Quora? Is it from Niche? Understand where it's coming from, what it's saying, and then address where you can any of the inaccuracies or areas that you don't want to be represented in the way that it is being represented or pulled from those citations. Fourth, keep content current and relevant. Very important that you have content that is new, that is fresh, that is ongoing. Large language models always favor recency, and then relevancy is also critical as well. And then the last one, use media to reinforce authority. This is often overlooked or missed. Think about the imagery on your site. Think about the videos on your site. Think about YouTube. YouTube is highly cited, especially in the Google sphere of AI search. Can you optimize your YouTube your YouTube videos to ensure that they are highly searchable and highly visible? Because that'll increase your visibility and your presence in AI search results. So I just walked through a lot. AI search is a huge, huge area, and it is growing and booming. So it's important that it's a part of your media and marketing mix. But now let's take it back to the general student search, and I'll pass it back to Jocelyn.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that look at the mechanics of how, AI discovery and how we can optimize for answer engines. And I guess as I think about the enrollment strategy as a whole, we have to be honest. If we've only optimized for answer engines, we're not going to see enrollment results if we're also still using kind of an outdated approach, right? So let's talk about why our traditional approach is struggling to connect with students in this new environment. So for years, student search operated really on a simple volume game. High reach, broad name buys, all that kind of resulted in casting the widest net possible. And that worked fairly well when students relied upon us to be their primary source of information. But, in looking at the behavior of the next generation of learners, they are really good at filtering. So when we reach out with broad, generic messaging, they don't see it as outreach. They just kind of see it as noise, or they're not even paying attention. And so in an era of AI curated answers, noise can be a barrier to enrollment. So relevance has really emerged and become mission critical to enrollment strategy. And it's moving away from the question, how many students can we reach, to how helpful can we be at the exact moment that they are needing information from us. So to do that, we have to recognize that students aren't waiting for our email blasts. They're actively seeking answers through a variety of different channels. So with that, let's take a closer look at the entry points. So for many students, the first website they visit isn't yours. It's probably ChatGPT or Google or some other AI enhanced search. Students are doing their initial vetting there, which makes your digital presence both owned and not really important to your search strategy. Then in terms of social media for this generation, as John mentioned, YouTube is a big resource, as well as TikTok, both of which they're using to research colleges and universities. And they're really looking for like that evidence of what it's like to be on your campus through peer peer generated content. And then in terms of direct outreach, email, mail, we have to keep our digital presence, but we also can't write off traditional channels like email. It's not totally dead yet. They are still checking it, even if it's once a month. But if it's not personalized, it's going to be ignored. And so that's something we have to think about. And then finally, with over 70% of students trusting alumni and family over your institutional messaging, we have to be thinking about how we start weaving them into your strategy as well. So I think the key takeaway here is that you cannot just own one channel. A colleague said it best when she described student search as kind of surround sound. We have to be present and consistent across all these different entry points, because that's where students are filtering and making decisions about your campus. So what does the modern search require? I would say building a modern enrollment operation really comes down to these four pillars. So we have to, know your audience. We always talk about having personas, but when you're doing this in-house, that can quickly become overwhelming. And so instead, I would just advise you to start with the data that you already have. Do you collect first generation status? Do you have academic interest? Use biodemo data. But don't just stop at the numbers. I would also advise you to look at the qualitative data. What are the common questions your staff are getting on the phone or via email or during campus visits? What is your admitted student survey research revealing about your matrics and your non-matrics? That data is some of the most actionable insights that you might have already in your toolkit. And from there, you want to really build out for discovery. So we've already established that students are going to AI to find answers. So now we have to ensure that your content it exists in the way that they're actually asking those questions. And this is where that, commonly asked questions that you train your staff on can be leveraged to build out content on your website or in email campaigns. But then from there, we also want to make sure that we are personalizing the journey and looking specifically, perhaps at your historical communication campaign and what has had the most traction and at what point in the cycle. Look at your analytics to see where students are clicking links but not converting and moving through the funnel. Time your follow-up messages to really drive re-engagement and, ensure that your messaging is matching specific concerns and readiness signals. And then finally, be sure to measure what matters. Stop using open rates to assess effectiveness. Journey progression, yield indicators, actual enrollment outcomes matter far more. And if your data isn't telling you why a student is moving forward, then it's not the right data. So we know from research that students are filtering on feasibility before they ever look at brand or fit. And if we don't speak to affordability first and early, then the rest of the conversation really is irrelevant. So some things that you can do now is to make sure that your affordability messaging is at the top of the funnel. So for many of our clients, we advise to have those affordability messages very early on in search campaigns. Because if they're not getting that message from you, they're not going to continue through the funnel. We also have to use plain language. Financial aid jargon's often super confusing and very institutional, and we need to explain net price and indirect costs in language that students and parents can actually understand without a calculator. And then on top of that, institutions would really benefit from showing full cost if you're not already. Don't just show tuition. We have to be upfront about the housing, the fees, and the actual cost of living, and then clarifying which costs are variable, which costs are fixed. And then highlight, how it all comes together. This is really where we earn trust as an institution. We want to show them the math, how the scholarships and the grants and the work studies are combined to make the investment for families feasible. I would advise you on providing sample award letters to drive engagement and increase transparency and really help them build confidence in their decision. So today's students, we know, are very skeptical of those perfectly polished kind of marketing photography. They really want authenticity, and so that's something we have to prioritize as institutions. And I would suggest that you start by evaluating your current outreach and assets to identify where there might be an opportunity for a more authentic touch. Our partner data is really clear that students get highly engaged with more unpolished, relatable content than the professional marketing. A great example of this is Slate Video. We've seen time and time again that institutions that incorporate those Slate videos just done at a laptop really resonate with students. You can use an ambassador or a staff assigned admissions counselor, but that tends to have some really great traction. And then we also want to lead with campus safety. That came up, as Caitlin said, in the research as a top concern for students. I know historically I've always thought about talking about campus safety with parents, but students, it's a top concern as well. So we can't bury that information. We have to be clear and lead with it up front. And then lastly, we really need to treat belonging as a decision factor. So prospective students are really prioritizing a question of, will I fit in here? Can I find friends? Even over academic ratings in some cases. So leading with the content that really highlights a sense of community. Leverage, if you have them at your disposal, digital spaces that you own, and you can help prospective students connect with one another as well as connect with current students and ambassadors. You can do that early in the process. That can be a great strategy as well. And then if we didn't pick it up earlier, day in the life content really is popular amongst the students, and it's something that they're saying in the survey. We're also seeing it in our partner data as well, that anytime we're incorporating day of the life in videos, we're getting a lot of traction with prospective students. That's definitely something you want to include in your toolkit. And then next, we need to show that adaptability that Caitlin was talking about coming through in the research. Students are anxious, and not just students, parents too, families, influencers. They're anxious about AI, the economy. What does the future look like? And so we need to frame academic programs not just as degrees, but as pathways that will prepare them for whatever might be next. And so lean into that flexibility as a strategy. Acknowledge that life changes, that it's okay to be undecided or to change your major. Position your programs as options that will allow the students to explore, to change their mind, that aren't necessarily rigid, tracks that really lock them in. That's definitely an advantage with today's student. And then obviously we've talked about this for many years, but we have to connect directly to outcomes. We have to stop being really vague about, quote, workforce readiness claims, and we need to get really specific about internship opportunities, job placement rates, certificates, et cetera. We want to, if we have these proof points, say, if you study X, where exactly is that going to take you, and show pathways, not only to careers, but also knowing your students. And, for some campuses, going on to graduate and professional programs is where a lot of your students go. And so being able to point to what those outcomes look like. And then, really lastly, just kind of acknowledge the uncertainty. Students are really wondering if a degree in this area will be relevant in this new economy and AI-driven society. And so, how are you showing them how those programs that you offer build those soft skills like critical reasoning, communication, thinking, et cetera, and which will help them, ultimately in the real world, regardless of, what the economy does. And then last, I mean, moving into more data, the most effective enrollment teams, as we well know, aren't just looking at final enrollment numbers. You all are looking at the data in real time throughout the cycle, and you're adjusting as needed when you're monitoring throughout the year. So think about additional metrics that can be useful to track. If a student opens an email but doesn't click the link, if another visits a web page but doesn't fill out the form, these are all signals, um, not just metrics. And so it's an immediate opportunity for campuses to trigger personalized follow-up that speaks to that particular moment where the student didn't follow through. Um, Beyond behavior, though, you also may have some attribution data that you want to be mindful of and to really understand and see where you're spending your time and resources. And if a channel isn't driving outcomes, then we have to be ruthless and really stop resourcing it. Um, a recent example that comes to mind, we had a client who was really curious about creative imagery. And so we were able to assess and look at specifically the military audience, which was a priority audience for this campus. And we found, it's very interesting, that early in the funnel, students were clearly responding to images of service members in uniform. But as those students progressed toward enrollment, the creative that performed the best shifted to images of those same students in the classroom. So really trying to zero in on what data you have available to inform how you move forward. And finally, use your data to find any content gaps. So if you're seeing high traffic but low conversion, you might have an AEO gap. An audit can help tell you if you're planning, if you're answering the questions that students are actually asking, or if you're just putting up content that you hope they'll read. And certainly that's something that Carnegie can help with as well. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Caitlin.
Great. Thank you so much. I was laughing as kind of both of you were sharing all of these things that I think when I was in my college search, I was like checking out VHS tapes from my guidance counselor and taking them home and watching them. And so we've come a long way. And so to say that it is a lot, as Jocelyn said, like search is now surround sound, and so you have to be showing up consistently across channels. There are a lot of things each institution can and should be doing, but that can also be overwhelming if you try to tackle all of this at once. And so some practical takeaways from both what John and Jocelyn shared today. As I said at the beginning, like if you're going to screenshot one slide, this could be it. And you can do a lot of this work with tools you already have access to today. And so the first one is reviewing your messaging. So we talked a lot about what we know students care about, what we know are driving those decisions and why. We also have a full webinar on that research as well that goes a little bit further in depth. And on the next slide, I'll share a link to download the full report. But take those findings, put them into ChatGPT or Claude, and then test your messaging against it. So am I answering those questions? Am I talking about the things that students are caring about? Am I writing it in a way that's going to resonate with this audience? So that's sort of step one. Step two is mapping the journey. Are there places where a student might be searching or looking for information that you're not showing up today, or worse, like the wrong information is showing up? And so one of the other things we didn't really get into in talking about the research is that students were using brand almost as a proxy for trust. And so if you're showing up consistently with the same content, if those influencers who are talking about you are talking about the same things, the same messages that you're sharing, it was a lot easier to trust and make that decision. So really think about, put yourself in a student's position or ask ChatGPT to put themselves in a student position to find those places where maybe communications are breaking down or the experience is not what you want it to be. And in that same way, pressure test your content. So again, are there places where questions are being asked that I don't have a clear answer for them, or that content is out of date? And then finally, audit your AI search visibility. So again, we know students are now starting with a conversation. They're looking at those AI summaries in traditional Google searches. And so, am I showing up where they're looking with the information they're looking for? And I think we mentioned this earlier, but that's something that Carnegie can help with as well. We offer an AI audit so we can help you understand where you're showing up, where you rank against your competitors, and the types of questions your prospective students are asking. So, with that, I know that was a lot to leave you with. One more takeaway here is the Next Gen Learners Report is available for download now. You can do that at the QR code here or Carnegie highered.com and go over to research. But there's a lot of great information about what they're looking for and why they care about that in the report. And then finally, just want to thank you, Jocelyn and John, anyone who's watching, for joining us today. Really important conversation to be having, and I'm excited that we've come a long way from VHS tapes and printed out view books. But if there is anything we talked about today that you're interested in or could use some help with, the Carnegie team would love to have a conversation. So you can go ahead and scan that QR code, and we'll get you connected with someone. But thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thanks.